I don't want no oil spoiling my shoreline. I like fish much better than crud. I like birds and things creeping and crawling. Won't trade no more oil for blood. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that black demon oil's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes! Good morning, Toledo, and good afternoon, Columbus, and hello to those of you listening on the internet, wherever, and whenever you may be, and of course, to all our wonderful Pacifica stations. Thank you so much for listening. And what you're listening to is For a Green Future. My name is Joe DeMar, and I'm here with my fantabulous co-host,
Rebecca Wood.
Yes, and together, Rebecca and I are crafting an incredible hour of radio called For a Green Future, where we talk about ecology and the environment. And we talk about it in the ways that it affects you, your wealth, your health, your happiness, the wealth and health and happiness of the bees that are waking up, and the moths and the butterflies and the flies and basically all those creepy crawly insects. And because, like it or not, all of us are wrapped up together on this wonderful planet called Earth. And we have a typically wonderful show for you today. We're going to chat just for another 10 minutes or so. And then we have a great guest calling in, the wonderful Diane D'Arrigo. We'll be talking about some not so wonderful things that the Trump administration has been doing in terms of promoting nuclear power. Then it'll be we'll hear from our patrons, our incredible patrons who are, I hesitate to use the word superhuman, but, in terms of our patrons, kind of applies.
They might as well be.
Exactly. And then, Rebecca, it will be your turn at the mic, and what will you be talking about?
I will be talking about garlic.
Garlic. Okay. And then after that, it'll be ecological news from around the world. And so hopefully at some point in this process, though, that we'll hear from you, because this is a call-in show. This is live here in Toledo on Sunday morning, and we're asking folks to call in at 877-909-1007. That's 877-909-1007. Or you can text at any time at 419-973-5841, 419-973-5841. And you can actually use that text number anytime, 24/7, 7 days a week. It doesn't have to be while we're on the air, for any sort of comment and any sort of ecological things that have caught your attention over the past week. And this week, of course, is an auspicious week in terms of the environment, because this is the week of Earth Day. Earth Day is Wednesday the 22nd, and there's all kinds of celebrations going on. Back in my town of Bowling Green, Ohio, they're having a big thing at the Montessori school today, where all kinds of organizations that care about the environment have tables and displays and so forth. And this is my favorite holiday in the world. Earth Day is, because it
really is.
It's the one holiday literally everybody on the planet can celebrate, regardless of religion, political affiliation, age, location. Just celebrating the Earth, this great big ball of rock that we're sitting on with this tiny little sliver of habitable exterior. It's a good thing to do. And every Earth Day, I kind of get reminded that everybody, on some level, everybody actually loves the planet. Okay, even the people that are kind of destroying it at the moment, or you're making the decisions that are wrecking it. If you talk to them personally, they'll tell you, "Oh no, I love the Earth. I'm just doing this one mine, or I'm just doing this one, removing all this chunk of timber. There's still lots of trees left, or whatever." Um, I kind of got reminded of that. Kind of a sobering reminder. There was an estate sale in Perrysburg this past week that I stopped by because there's always that little morbid curiosity about what people leave behind when they.
Sylvania is also a good place for estate sales and also large item pickup day.
Yes, yeah, they're quite they're quite well off there in Sylvania, or actually this is Perrysburg. I'm sorry, Perrysburg, Ohio, still applies. And the woman who lived in this really beautiful house, all her books were there, and she had all these books from around 2016 or so that were talking about ways that you could have a bipartisan approach to saving the environment, right? Proposals for legislative strategies that both Republicans and Democrats could get behind, all published around 2016, just before Trump's first term, when Republicans still at least said they cared about the environment. And it was just a reminder that this woman who passed, she must have been a Republican who did care about the environment, because, she went to the trouble of buying and reading all these books about how they could do things. Now, of course, that's not what's happened since then. I mean, the Republicans have taken that, as a party, have taken an incredibly anti-environmental
They
turn.
now actively hate the environment, apparently.
Well,
not just maybe care about a little less.
Well, at the very top. But the rank and file, like I say, anybody, if you talk to them, they'll still say that they love the environment. And one of the ways this has become one of the ways this has manifested itself is in the opposition to the data centers, because that's very much a bipartisan kind of opposition, and it's grassroots, it's organic.
Nobody likes those things.
Nobody likes them. There's a huge, right now in Ohio, there's a huge statewide petition drive to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot that would limit data centers to size of 25 megawatts or less. Not exactly a ban. It's kind of being marketed as a ban, but it's really just a limitation against the huge mega data centers, the ones that use as much power as a city for just one data center. And there's a lot of conservatives, a lot of Republicans in this movement. I know for a fact, because I'm actually one of the people carrying petitions for it, and I went to the petition training, and about half the people there identified as conservative Republicans who don't like the idea of these data centers. But there is a danger of this movement sort of getting co-opted away from just data center opposition, because I'm starting to see, on the Facebook pages and in the groups talking about this, the chatting groups, that they're also sort of drifting over into attacking things like battery storage. I just saw that this morning. Somebody posted this big long thing saying, "Oh, well, one of the terrible things about data centers is they have these backup batteries." And no, folks.
That's not the terrible thing.
That's not the terrible thing. The terrible things are things like the one here in Bowling Green. They're going to put a 300 megawatt gas-fired power plant. That's terrible, because that's going to put millions of tons of CO2 into the air all the time. But having backup batteries is not terrible. In fact, battery backup is one of the essential ways that we're going to get to 100% renewable energy, because wind and solar are intermittent. They produce lots of power sometimes and no power other times. So you smooth that out with energy storage, with batteries. But there's also some of these people that are opposing the data centers. Some of them are, like a subset, are the same people that oppose solar fields. for example. And this just reminded me of one of the things we need to be cautious about as people who care about the environment is getting misdirected, sort of guided from one pro-environment position and people manipulating that and using that to bring you all the way around to another anti-environmental position.
Right.
And so if the data center opposition gets derailed over into opposition to battery storage, that's bad.
Right.
And of course, the classic example of this is nuclear power, because what's happened, one of the reasons they say, oh, we need nukes now, is because it's low carbon, or they claim carbon-free energy source, which of course it isn't. There's tons of carbon involved in keeping nuclear power going. But some people, and particularly some politicians, like Democratic politicians, have been steered around from the opposition to putting more carbon in the air all the way over to being pro-nuclear, which is, of course, a very anti-environmental position, as we talk about often on this show, because nuclear power is perhaps the least environmentally or ecologically wise way to generate power ever devised. Because while CO2 will stay in the atmosphere for, the estimates are 100 to 300 years before it all got to get pulled out by the plants and so forth. Radioactive waste from nuclear power plants, some of it stays deadly for 250,000 years, and there's literally no way to neutralize it. So I'm just saying, yes, it's time to celebrate Earth Day, and I have, my annual Earth Day party planned for this April 22nd, this Wednesday. So it's definitely a joyous time to celebrate the Earth. But if you're someone who cares about the environment, you always have to be cautious that you're not that love of the Earth isn't being used to manipulate you all the way around to doing things that hurt the planet.
Right.
So just always something to keep in mind. So, and, one of the people who has kept this in mind very clearly over the years that I've known her is Diane D'Arrigo, who is our good friend from Nuclear Information Resource Service. Diane, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we could hear you very well. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right. So, unfortunately, there's sort of a necessity to invite you because all kinds of terrible things are happening on the nuclear front right now. And in particular, there's these executive orders that Trump has been issuing. So let's talk about those now. Sort of what's going on? What's coming off the desk at the White House there?
Well, back in last May, Trump signed an executive order that directed the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to reassess all of its regulations. So the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was created out of the Atomic Energy Commission. The Atomic Energy Commission is the agency that formed when the bombs were being developed, the Manhattan Project years, and the building of the bomb was justified supposedly by saying, well, there's a good thing we can do with this. We can make nuclear power. But it was evident then, and it's been evident in other countries since, that unbridled pushing for nuclear is disastrous. And so there was a split of the Atomic Energy Commission into the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, whose role was to regulate nuclear activities, nuclear power, nuclear waste, nuclear materials, and the Department of Energy, whose job it was to promote and build nuclear weapons and promote nuclear technology. The federal regulations for both the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the Department of Energy are all under 10 Code of Federal Regulations the Code of Federal Regulations, Section 10. And the first part of 10 CFR are all of the Code of Federal Regulations is shortened to CFR. So the Code of Federal Regulations for the NRC run from 10 CFR 1 to 10 CFR 600 or something like that. All of these regulations, and all of these are paragraphs that have been vetted and legal and supposedly, they have not been protective enough over the decades. But the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, has been blamed for the slowdown in nuclear technology, in nuclear power. The last reactors that were built, before the Vogel ones started up a couple of years ago, the last ones that started up were decades ago.
So they're quote unquote being blamed for this by pretty much the nuclear industry itself, right? By the promoters of nuclear power.
I guess so. Certainly, Congress members believe it because the House and Senate voted to direct the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. This was under Biden years. This was before Trump's second reign. The Advance Act was passed. The whole Senate voted for it except for Senator Markey in Massachusetts and Senator Sanders in Vermont. And I think there were a few that were not present. But in essence, it was a huge support for the nuclear power industry in the Senate. And the same thing in the House. There were a few House members that voted against it or were absent, but it was a massive, they called it the Advance Act, and it was to put money toward new nuclear. It was to put authorization for new nuclear. It was to tell the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to reassign its own mission they're saying essentially to stop impeding nuclear when their job was simply to regulate it. And they had been promoting it for decades already. But with that in place comes the Trump executive order, and it's Executive Order 14300, and it basically tells the NRC to revamp all of its regulations. So the Advance Act said revamp your mission, and then the executive order said revamp your regulations. So we've got decades of regulations since I believe it was 1974 when the NRC was created. 1974. And so they have had regulations on radiation and on reactor hazards and security and safety and different cooling systems and all kinds of very specific regulations and rules for how to apply for a reactor license or for a nuclear dump or for an amendment to a license. So what the NRC is in the process of doing now in response to both the Advance Act and the executive order is to change all of its rules. And my organization, Nuclear Information Resource Service, which has been around since 1978, has been tracking the regulations and trying to prevent them from being weakened in the past. So we know for some of these, the radiation standards, the efforts by the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and other agencies to deregulate nuclear waste, pretend it's not radioactive, and recycle it into consumer goods like belt buckles, frying pans, baby toys, yard soil. We have been successful in preventing the declaration of nuclear waste as below regulatory concern at least 15 times since 1980 when it was first originally proposed. So I am sure that this directive is going to have 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 different regulation changes that will move to allow nuclear waste to be deregulated, nuclear materials to go into regular garbage and recycled into consumer goods and get into the marketplace. That's just one. They're also planning to increase the allowable radiation exposure to the public, to the workers, and releases to the environment. The order specifically says, NRC, you should reassess the scientific basis for your standards. The scientific consensus has been that every amount of radiation can cause cancer.
Mm-hmm.
There's no safe level of ionizing radiation. There's no threshold below which radiation is safe. So what it's called the linear no threshold theory, and it says that every amount of radiation, there's no safe level, any amount of radiation could initiate, cause, or accelerate cancer. And that's all they're looking at is cancer. The regulations only protect or claim to protect against cancer when, in fact, radiation is now known to cause reduced immunity, heart disease, ischemic heart disease, which then, if you've got reduced immunity, you've got greater susceptibility to many other ailments. And there's a book by Ian Fairley, a PhD in tritium out in England. He's originally from Canada, that I could get for you for your website, but it even associates it with things such as dementia and Alzheimer's, which I had not heard until I saw this book, and I've just got my hands on it. So radiation causes more than cancer. They only look at cancer when they're doing regulatory limits. They only look at the health effects to the standard man, because originally men were the ones working in the bomb factories, in the nuclear reactors, in the industry, and they wanted to keep their workers alive, and so they made standards based on the standard man. And then when radiation was becoming more and more of an environmental contaminant, they said, oh, well, we have to protect the public. And I say protect because they're called standards to protect against radiation, but they're really legalizing exposure to radiation. So it's a double-edged sword.
So it's more.
So regulations that
it's more like levels of damage we're willing to accept, rather than levels of protection.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you about one of the more insane executive orders that Trump has put out, and this is his order that there should be at least 4 new nuclear reactors online by July 4th of this year.
Yeah, one of the other outrageous things, so in addition to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission making these changes in the rules, which could lead to dramatic increases in radioactivity release into air and water, doses to the public, exposures to the public, exposures to workers and the environment, and species, flora, fauna, crops, soil.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, the Department of Energy has been adopting changes, and they have not been putting these out for public comment, or at least not very loudly. And one of those is to allow for nuclear reactors to be built on Department of Energy land with Department of Energy permission without having to without getting an NRC license. So as I said at the beginning here, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is charged by law, federal law, to give licenses for nuclear reactors. The Department of Energy has had weapons reactors that it built to make material for bombs over the years. Those are all closed right now, and huge messes to be cleaned up. But now we're talking about Department of Energy enabling new reactors to be built and not having to meet the National Environmental Policy Act criteria, not having to meet the Nuclear Regulatory Commission criteria. In fact, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission not even having to license them. They're calling it a categorical exclusion, and dozens of organizations around the country did do comments, and we are poised to challenge that. But to answer your question, how are they going to get 4 reactors operating by the 4th of July? That would be by circumventing regulatory controls, because the designs of the reactors haven't even been approved, let alone reactor licenses approved for specific designs. So what it's going to be is more of the Wild West on Department of Energy land, trying to get something up and running to make it look like nuclear is viable, when in fact none of these will be, if any, are able to operate or open or even have a fission reaction by the 4th of July. They would not be supplying electricity to the grid. They would be more showcases on DOE property. Mm-hmm. Although there is a big threat in Kansas, but the people in Kansas have been opposing it. A private company called Deep Isolation and Deep Fission wants to build nuclear reactors underground. They want to dig slit trenches down and put reactors down there, and it's not clear how they would cool them, how they would manage and operate them. It's all
just
kind of it's
fantasy,
a threat that unfortunately
it's a nuclear fantasy, right?
Yeah. And people in Kansas, unfortunately, Parsons, Kansas, are having to expend resources and challenge these, because there's a big push for that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where are we in terms of what people can do about any of this? Where?
So thank you for the most important question. If you search online for NRC wholesale, because they're admitting that it's a wholesale change in regulations, the wholesale revision of regulations under Executive Order 14300, there are 20 plus, say like 28 proposed rule changes. They're taking all those decades of federal regulations in 10 CFR, and they are proposing changes to them, and they're doing it in these 20 plus different chunks, each of which have a public comment period for 30 days, or will have. And so the rules they've started coming out. A few of them have already been completed, but there are proposed ones that we will be doing alerts on and asking people to actually write their own comments as well as sign on to standard comments, particularly the ones that will threaten the underpinning radiation exposures to the public and the releases of nuclear waste into commerce. So those are, if you wanted to get an overview of what they're up to, you'd go to this wholesale page, which is on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission website, nrc.gov, under wholesale. And then as the dates that are projected for that radiation one to come up, that is expected to be published on June 8th. So on June 8th, I think that's current date, they change a bit. There's one that will exempt materials from being licensed. That sounds like a below regulatory concern threat. That one is going to be published on July 9th. So we need to get in our specific technical and general public opposition and concerns. We won't even see the rule until this day that it is released. And so the thing that we need to do is, to start out with, since we know it's going to be a short turnover, we are working on doing some educational trainings. We could do a webinar if there was a group that was interested in having a presentation. We're working on public education in advance, and then to get out the comments once the comment periods start. And unfortunately, we have checked with a few lawyers, and it looks like the whole thing cannot be challenged in one swoop. Each individual change has to be challenged under the current regulations, commenting and then appealing the comments and then going to court. So it's a burdensome process.
Wow.
But the public can help with sharing the information, sharing the alerts once we've got the information on what they're going to be doing. And like I said, we have clues on some of them.
Mm-hmm. So the NRC is weakening standards wholesale, but we have to fight all that weakening retail. Basically, we got to pay retail.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
right.
That's true.
Okay. Well, all right, Diane. So, how could you mentioned getting alerts? How could people, keep on top of this and be ready?
There's a page on the NIRS website, NIRS.org is our website, Nuclear Information Resource Service. And then there's a page for signing on at the top of across the panel where you can get more information, and we will be alerting people on our alert lists as these things happen, and we'll be putting them on the website itself.
All right, NIRS.
There's already a little bit on there now about the executive orders. Sorry to talk over you, but there is already a little bit on the executive orders right now.
All right,
on the website.
Well, thanks so much for the information, Diane, and we'll keep on top of this.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we'll see how this goes.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks for covering it. Bye-bye.
Sure. Bye. All right, that was Diane D'Arrigo of NIRS. So, terrible news coming out of Washington, but that's not the first time that's been said.
No.
Okay.
You just assume if it's coming out of Washington, it's terrible these days.
Okay, but a wonderful thing that keeps me happy are our patrons. The fact that we've got people that are willing every month to make a little donation to keep the show going. And what they did, the way they did that was they went to patreon.com, that's Patreon, and there they searched for For a Green Future. Up popped our Patreon page. They looked through at the different membership levels, picked one that matched their budget, and now every month a little bit comes out of their account, comes over to us, and because there's, a fair number of them, that actually is what helps us keep this show on the air. So thank you to our patrons. And if you're interested in joining them, just go to patreon.com. And one of the reasons it's nice that we have this show is because every week Rebecca gets to talk about a topic, an ecological topic. And what have we got this week, Rebecca?
Okay, well, today, actually, this is 4/19, this Sunday when we're recording this, or / broadcasting locally, is National Garlic Day.
National Garlic Day. Wow. I probably have a party on that day every year, too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, garlic makes things taste like food, first of all. That's the important thing you need to know about it. It's also, its Latin name is Allium sativa, and it's very nutrient dense. There's a lot of information out there that you immediately run across about how nutritious and healthy it is. It's sulfur rich also. Sulfur being a key component in proteins, connective tissue, and antioxidant production, which supports detoxification, skin health, and joint function. Who knew? So whoever wrote the article, presumably. But yeah, garlic in general is an anti-inflammatory. It boosts immunity. So, you might want to eat a lot of garlic if you're near the nuclear power plant. I'm just saying. It lowers cholesterol. It's an antibacterial. And the reason people crush it, besides the fact that it tastes better that way, is that crushing creates allicin, which intensifies all of these benefits, as opposed to just, you can't actually just make whole garlic soup, or roasted garlic can go in things. Like you can, if you're making a sheet pan full of taters and onions and things, then you can throw some on there too. So that's good. It's also bad for dogs, like all other alliums. Eating this cooked in garlic, your dog should not have. But yeah, in terms of nutrients, it has potassium, phosphorus, zinc, selenium, calcium, magnesium, manganese, iron, and vitamins A, B, and C, including the whole B complex.
Wow.
I read someplace that it may cause bleeding. I think maybe they just mean it's a blood thinner, possibly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think you just eat garlic and suddenly start bleeding.
I never have.
Yeah, me neither. Me neither. Yeah, and it's native to Central and Western Asia.
Oh,
Originally.
know that.
Yeah.
I kind of assumed it was native to Italy.
Of
but,
course, yeah. Well, no, you guys didn't even invent noodles and maters.
No, but we've perfected them.
Yeah. You are good at finding other stuff from other places and making it your own. By gum.
That was kind of the whole Roman Empire. Almost all the tech we used for the Roman Empire started somewhere else. We just applied it.
Did not know that. Okay. Well, some of the benefits, ecologically speaking, of garlic are that it enhances soil health. Lower, I think, by structurally, mostly by the roots and stuff. It lowers nitrous oxide emissions from the soil, which I didn't even know soil did that.
Wow. Okay.
Apparently, it just sort of exudes them. It's a natural pest repellent, and it requires relatively low water input, and also supports biodiversity. And the waste can be made into biocomposite materials or biochar. I have a feeling the garlic industry got in there and added those last two, but it could, The drawbacks would be they require heavy pesticide use, because I guess there are some pests that it doesn't. Although somebody just pointed out that garlic is good. Somebody a listener
we got a text.
Yeah, we got a text, and they said that they also repel deer. Deer do not eat them, so they're a good thing if you live close to a close to a little forest or something where there's deer. There's a lot of deer in Toledo. It's weird. I saw one run across the courthouse lawn one time. It was bizarre, in the middle of downtown. But yeah, okay. I don't know why this is good, but okay, no, this is bad. I'm still doing the bad stuff. High fertilizer requirements. This is partly because garlic is not efficient at using nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, so people have to over-fertilize. I don't know. I mean, they like it, but they're not good at using it or something. It's kind of like my brain likes dopamine, but, doesn't seem to quite make the connection very easily, I guess. Also, they can lower methane emissions in ruminants, and this, for some reason, was in the bad category. Maybe if you're trying to get methane out of ruminant, but you can't, put a pipe
Yeah.
for the ruminants.
I don't know why that would be bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe that was a mistake and it belonged in the plus category. But if you want your ruminants to produce methane, it's bad, I guess. So yeah, Chinese garlic has also been associated with sewage irrigation, so that's not good. I'd sort of give it an extra rinse, even if it is wrapped up in the sort of papery husk, and if it might have come from China. Also, it can take up microplastics from the soil and transmit them up the food chain, including to us. And also, garlic extract can apparently affect non-targeted species if you're like spraying garlic oil on your garden or something. Apparently, as a pesticide. So,
okay,
things to think about.
All right. Well, thank you, and I can attest to the pest thing because, we've gone into mosquito-infested areas after taking a garlic oil pill, you got to wait about an hour for it to sort of work its way out to your pores.
Right.
And, we have literally walked past people that were being attacked by clouds of mosquitoes with it when we had our garlic shield going.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
It'll keep people away too.
That's and vampires.
There you go.
There you are.
Vampires. Yeah.
Okay, on to ecological news. And first story, it's kind of a good story. This is from Euronews.com on April 11th. And the title is, 2 new studies could change critics' opinions about how many birds die from wind turbines. And of course, as you know, the big disinformation is that they chop up birds like Cuisinarts. They've been doing some very careful studying about this. There's this one study just came out. They looked at an offshore wind farm in Aberdeen, and they looked at the wind farm for 19 months from June 23 till December of 24, and they had 0 bird collisions in the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was...
We think birds are dumb because their brains don't work like human brains, but, they are better at flying around wind turbines than you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Put a human in one of those wingsuits, shoot him past a wind farm.
Yeah.
That might not be pretty.
True.
But birds are really good at
They
avoiding
got survival
things.
skills.
Yeah. There was also a second study. This was done by the German Offshore Wind Energy Association, which initials in German are BWO, and they used radar and AI cameras for 1.5 years, and they tracked 4 million bird flights in and around wind turbines, and they found that it was the avoidance rate was 99.8%.
Okay.
So that's pretty darn close to 100%.
Which, yeah, probably your plate glass window has taken out more birds than that.
Definitely. And, even trees take out birds sometimes.
Yeah,
I actually saw a bald eagle once that had impaled itself on trees.
Oh, that's awful.
Oh, yeah. It might have been forced down. There could have been a territory battle or something, but 99.8%, that's pretty darn safe for birds.
For the love of God, do not tell the Trump administration about this. It'll outlaw trees to protect the birds.
Maybe, but this is an example of organizations that care about the environment, like the Audubon Society in the U.S. and the German Wildlife Association in Germany, that actually oppose wind because they want to protect the birds. They've basically fallen for the disinformation.
Yeah.
And, so all you can do is studies like this one because, it seems like, people sort of it seems logical that, you've got these big things and they're moving through the air, and the tips could actually move very quickly because they're covering such a wide area. And so it seems reasonable to assume they're killing lots of birds. But that's why we do studies. That's why we have data.
See, birds make their living by sensing where the air currents are going to go and picking the right ones.
Exactly. So good news out of those stories. So wind turbines do not. We can conclusively say wind turbines do not chop up birds like Cuisinarts, and good news. Next story. This is a sort of a breaking news story. It just came out yesterday, in fact. Mothers for Peace in San Luis Obispo in California. We've had them on the air. They're sort of a cutting edge anti-nuclear organization. And what they did was they have on their website a little article called "How Radioactive is Our Ocean?" And what they did is they went down to the ocean, and they periodically have taken samples of water and then sent them off to be tested for cesium, radioactive cesium. That's cesium-137 and 134. And those two radioactive isotopes they have half-lives. 137 has a half-life of 30 years, and 134 has a half-life of 2 years. And the reason you look for those is that they do not exist in nature. With such short half-lives, all the cesium that was created when the Earth was made, disappeared billions of years ago. And so this is a completely man-made radioactive isotope. And
Wonder what it turns into.
yeah, that's a good question. I think it goes down to a less radioactive version of cesium,
Okay.
but don't quote me on that.
Okay.
So what they did is in 2014, the levels of cesium-137 were right around 2 becquerels per cubic meter. Then in 2018, which is how long it took the Fukushima, the water that was in and around Fukushima to work its way all the way around the Pacific Ocean to the California coast, then they had a spike. It spiked up to 6.8 becquerels per cubic meter.
Oh my.
But then they just redid their study, and this past March, and it has spiked again to 7.8. So 7 times the background level. And the background level is cesium that's left over from like nuclear testing and Chernobyl and so forth. But they're saying 7.8. This new spike, they believe, is because this is the water that TEPCO is now dumping into the Pacific. That, TEPCO and Japan and the IAEA, International Atomic Energy Association, say, oh, that's just, quote unquote, just tritium, which is radioactive water.
Just a little tritium.
Tritium, but
No
which
big
of
deal.
course is an alpha emitter that can, like, if you swallow it, will tear your cells apart.
Oh,
But
dear God.
but they're saying, oh, that's all it is. But what this suggests, and what Mother Superior is saying, is that this could well mean that there's a whole bunch of other radioactive isotopes in there as well, and we need to actually study this to discover what's going on. It really kind of raises more questions than answers, but we have to know that, just keep in mind that there's 0 cesium-137 in nature. So all these pro-nuclear people that talk about bananas and how horribly radioactive they are, they're not radioactive with cesium. Okay?
Right.
That is a wholly new thing that we are not evolved to deal with. So interesting news from the folks at Mothers for Peace. Next story, and this is kind of an upbeat one. This comes from WJAC, Channel 6 in Pennsylvania. And that was on April 17th, they did a story. Pennsylvania invests in geothermal energy as lawmakers move to regulate industry. And what this is, Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania has created a $14 million program to test what's called enhanced geothermal. So regular geothermal, you might read that there's geothermal plants in California and Iceland and Greenland. Those depend on pockets of magma being not too far below the surface. So you can drill down a little ways and hit molten rock that's thousands of degrees. But really, all you need to do is drill down deep enough for it to be hot. It doesn't have to be thousands of degrees. It can be hundreds of degrees. And that's enough energy that you can extract that energy and use it to turn turbines and generate electricity.
Wow.
And so what they're doing in Pennsylvania is they're taking their depleted oil and gas drill wells, which are already dug and they're deep enough. Mm-hmm. And what they're experimenting with is creating these enhanced geothermal systems that will provide just constant base load power with 0 carbon. And they'll be able to do it pretty much forever because there's so much heat energy in the earth that you don't deplete it. It's not like running out of oil or gas from an oil field. That the rocks down there will always be hot, no matter how much power you generate.
Okay.
Because it just, more heat just comes up from the base of the earth.
When they stop being hot, we will have bigger problems.
Yeah, I mean, and that would take literally millions of years.
Yeah.
Because there's so much energy down there. So very interesting. Little worrisome that the legislature of Pennsylvania is looking at regulating it already before it exists. And so that's kind of this double standard that, clean energy, renewable energy like this gets regulated like crazy.
Yeah.
But, there's probably less regulation on the oil and gas fields that were there before than there's going to be on the geothermal that's going to come after, even though the geothermal is much safer and, just as we say, just builds on the infrastructure that's already there. But it is one of the things that has been identified as one of the ways that we can go to carbon free just by using the heat that's in the earth.
Interesting.
So it's good that Pennsylvania's starting to move in that direction. Okay, next story. This is one that we touched on a few episodes back, just at the very last minute, and I wanted to give it a little more time. And this is a seashepherd.org, and that's the Sea Shepherd organization. And basically what's happened is they've sent their ship, the Sea Shepherd, down to Antarctica to physically block, to do actual nonviolent resistance against the krill ships down there. That they have these great big krill harvesting ships, and it's really a case of whales, versus krill versus industry, because what they're doing is they're literally taking the food out of the mouths of these whales. They do these tremendous nets, and
Yeah, they've been having trouble getting to their breeding grounds and stuff because there's not enough food at the rest stops.
Yeah, you gotta, they, like blue whales especially, have to tank up on millions of tons of krill.
The krill vending machine is broken.
Right, in order to have enough body fat, in order to have enough energy to make it back up to the breeding areas. And they go almost a year without eating.
Wow.
They do their just big buffet pig out down there in Antarctica during the krill season, and then they can go months and months without any other food.
Wow.
But there has to be enough krill, and if you take the krill, which a lot of these companies are doing, then the whales will die.
What are they going to do with it?
What, with the krill?
Fish food? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, it is. That's one of the main uses of krill.
Okay.
Is they take the krill from Antarctica and feed it to the salmons in the destructive salmon farms up in Norway.
I see.
Another big use is supplements. If you go to any health food store, you'll see krill oil. Don't buy that. It's bad to buy, but that is one of the big uses. And it's kind of interesting that there's a geopolitical tinge to this, because most of these ships are actually Russian, and krill oil is one of the few sources of revenue that Russia has still got in order to keep its war going with Ukraine. So good luck to the Sea Shepherd folks. I'm going to try to get more of them on in the future, but
definitely.
But it's just good to know that they're down there right now, and it's very dramatic. If you go to their website, they've got video of them challenging these gigantic krill trawlers, and it's every bit as dangerous and vital as when they were doing this with whalers 20 years ago. They're still trying to save the whales.
Right.
Now they're just trying to save their food source instead of saving the whales themselves. Next story, a little bit depressing. Earth.org. This is on April 10th. Quote, near record sea temperatures in March race waves for return of El Nino and abnormally hot year. So it looks like March was, they measured 20.97 degrees centigrade for the average sea surface temperature. That's the second highest on record. That came from EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service. This triggers El Ninos, really hot sea surface temperatures, and that El Nino stopped the east-west wind circulation, and so that causes drought in Southeast Asia and Australia, but it causes floods in Africa and America. And so March was a record global heat month when you combine the sea and land temperatures. And of course, they point out in this article that the 11 warmest years in recorded history all happened in the past 11 years. So
interesting. My particular neighborhood in Toledo is it's very wet. It's very floody, although it's kind of on top of a hill, which is stupid. But they built all the houses too close together apparently, so they can't drain properly.
Oh yeah, so it comes off the roof and just yeah. So just get ready. So they're saying it's going to be hot and wet around here because of El Nino. We'll see what happens. Okay, final story, and we've timed this out just about right. Although there is still time to get another text. Oh, we We did get another text.
Ooh, what is
Now look at this. Okay, listener said, in the Youngstown area, we are expecting temperatures of 29 degrees tonight and 25 degrees Monday night. Do you think these low temperatures will damage leaves that have already popped out on trees? Yeah, leaves, and more importantly, flowers.
My roommate had to take in our lavender plant off of the porch.
Yeah, a lot of plants, like apple trees, for example, have put their flowers out early because it's been so hot. So they assumed, probably like the rest of us, that there wouldn't be any more freezing. But yeah, this
seemed like a reasonable assumption at the time.
It did, yeah. But this does not bode well for the fruit harvest around here. So thanks for the text. Next story, reneweconomy.com.au, April 17th. Title is Renewable Generation Records Fall Across the UK as Imported Gas Consumption Tumbles. And basically, they've had record renewable energy at record low imported energy. So 2013, UK imported 67% of its power. By 2024, that was down to 48%. And last year it was down to 46. And the reason is that they are generating massive amounts of wind, 24 gigawatts wind, which is 60% of their demand in last year. And solar is up to 35% of their demand. So they're getting like 95% sometimes plus of their energy from wind and solar. So good luck, good work, UK, US. Let's get on the ball. All right, that's it for this show. Thank you so much for listening. This is Joe DeMar.
That's it.
We are signing off.
And I do believe it's time we was done. I don't want them nukes run by them kooks who think radioactivity is fun. No more three-headed frogs or kids with leukemia. Nuclear power ain't fit for a dog. The sun done give us all we need to make this country run. But that nuclear power's got us fussing and fighting, and I do believe it's time we was done. No nukes!